Hello class, welcome to our uh, explanation of this learning module having to do with memos, a chance to practice our writing about accounting topics. In short, memos, the first four should not be very long, a page maybe, or two, but only into the second page if it's really interesting stuff. For the most part, it should be easily done in a page. So our topics are listed on this sheet. It gives some guidance. We're going to use a professional memo format. You can find by Googling professional memo easily enough and see plenty of examples of what this should look like. You're writing to your boss, so make sure that you are appropriate in style and tone, or to a client who has a rudimentary understanding of what's going on, but may need some things, at least the details about our subject, explained in the specifics. So we're going to deal with these having to do with Daveco. So these memos, if your boss is president of Daveco or someone that works there, that's who you're talking about, who understands a little bit about the business, but not necessarily accounting per se. So, first memo, we're going to write about accounting decisions that need to be made at the startup phase. Now, there are several decisions that need to be made, including how to get the money in finance, how it should be recorded in the financial statements. You've got assets versus expenses. You've got useful life of assets. You've got how to record the amounts paid for to make a loan fees. And what you're going to need to do is explain, because here is your boss looking at these financial statements down the road and wondering what it is that he's reading or understanding, he or she, and so you need to give them some background about why you decided to do certain things, why certain things are assets versus expenses, that sort of thing. And why those decisions give us better information than the alternatives. We are going to try to follow GAAP as best as possible with Daveco, and so that can be our explanation. If you have accounting rules that state a certain thing should be that way, that can be justified by using the codification. Memo 2, we're going to look at who's interested in the financial information. That's internal and external to Daveco. What kinds of things would they be looking at? What would they notice? How would you explain what they're seeing? In the first year especially, there's going to be a loss, meaning Daveco is going to lose money. That's to be expected. Don't be concerned. But that also requires some explanation as to what's happening there and why it's not the end of the world scenario. Memo 3 is going to deal with the overall report, the final product after we've done all the financial journal entries and we're ready to make a nice, pretty, professional looking report. What decisions did you have to make? Where do things go? How to display it? All that kind of stuff. Things that you might just make without thinking too much about. These I'm asking you to justify in this memo so that the boss can say, all right, this is why we decided to record assets at their net. So for instance, on the balance sheet we might put all of our long-term assets and then subtract the accumulated depreciation and then the net, or we could just put the net. And so whatever decision you make in presenting that, why did you make that decision, and what was your justification? Is it easier to read? Is it provide better information? Is it that sort of thing? Memo 4 is tax breaks. That's going to take a little bit of tax research. How would you find those tax breaks? Daveco is going to be a C corporation, and therefore you'll need to, and we're going to do a Form 1120, and that will hopefully give us some clues as to what tax breaks might be available that you could advise Daveco. Now, in the first year, and you lose money, tax breaks really don't matter. But as Daveco gets going, and in theory is going to make more money in future years, what could they do now that would allow for those tax breaks? Now, those are the short memos. If we go back to our module, you'll see that there's also a financial statement memo, and that's going to be a little more involved. The document describes what you need to do. It's called a public company report. It's not Memo 3, I'm sorry, it's Memo 5, but you're going to choose a publicly traded company that you can access complete financial information, the whole annual report. So it needs to be something that you can access. I would probably advise you not to choose a bank or other financial company, as those are a little more difficult to interpret. But if you do, that's fine too. But be ready for a little more deciphering that you'll have to do, because their financial information's presented just in a little different format. So you're going to, in past opportunities, you've hopefully learned in other classes how to calculate financial ratios, current ratio, profit margin, that sort of thing. Rather than telling you a list of ratios, I'm going to ask you to look at the kind of company that you are working with, that you've chosen, and decide what financial ratios are most important to them. So, for instance, if you were to choose a service company, something that provides service, say like Google, they would not care about inventory turnover, because inventory isn't an issue. And so why would they care if their inventory turned over quickly? They would be using different ratios. So what you're looking is the 7 most important, so to calculate. Then you calculate them for the last 2 years. All right? And then compare the latest year to the previous year and write some description about the performance of your company. Is it better? Is it worse? Is it improving? Is it going stellar, or is it just barely making by? Is it going the wrong direction? That sort of thing. Then there is some library databases, is what I suggest, using Hoover's. So if you go on the library website and you look up the Hoover's database, let's show you what that might. So here is the Hoover's online database accessible from the library here at Hack. When you click on that, you're going to be able to search for a company. So for instance, if you had chosen Microsoft, and I'm not telling you you should, just giving an example, you should be able to search for that, find that, all right? And then you're going to, when this comes up, you'll be able to look at competition and find companies that compete. All right? When you do that, you're going to be able to compare Microsoft or whoever company you choose with the competition as far as the ratios are concerned. So that's how that is found. So that's how you come up with ratios for the competition or the industry as a whole. Okay? If you notice that your company is significantly different than the industry or the competition, then you need to do a little searching through footnotes or for other news sources to find out any reason for those significant differences. All right? In the annual report, in every annual report published, there are a whole list of risks faced by the company. And also, often in the news, if you're paying attention, you'll see that how this companies respond to that risk with news stories and things like that. So you're going to look at that and see if you can see how that plays out in the financial statements. So for instance, if a company decides that one of the risks is the inability to collect receivables, and they decide as a response to that strategy to turn their receivables over to a third party to collect for them, then on the balance sheet likely you would see no accounts receivable. And so that would be how you would write that up. You'd say, here's the risk they identified. This is the strategy that they took on in order to do that. And this is how it played out. And yes, in this current year, there is no accounts receivable. So at the end, this only needs to be 3 pages. All right? But you're going to explain these strategies and how this company is doing based on what you see in the financial statements. So has this been successful? And that strategy, how would investors look at that? So that's how that 5th memo should play out and be explained. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of this learning module and what was expected. There will be a rubric to each of the memos and to the financial statement memo that I will use to grade them. That will include your writing style and presentation as well as the content and how much thought went into and work went into coming up with the content and what should happen with these memos. All right.